Hey everyone, this is the first of two updates I'm going to give you on the Iran situation. I could probably do half a dozen updates, but I want to split the topic a little bit. Right now, I want to focus on the reactions to the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. I want to show you some of the reactions, and then I'll share my thoughts about what it means, which might be a little bit different than what you're hearing everywhere else. So let's first take a look at how people are reacting here. So this is some celebrations in the streets of Iran. This is Iranian women. If you look at this, and you see women without their hijabs on. It's obviously significant. And here's most celebrations in the streets, honking their horns, celebrating. This is really kind of big stuff. We've been talking about the fact that, like, are the people going to come out into the streets? Are they going to protest again? They're obviously not getting shot at by the Basij, by the Iranian authorities, and that's already a very good sign. That does not equal regime change. Okay, this can all turn on a dime. I'll talk about that a little bit more soon, but just a little bit more of this. Here's some more celebrations with regime naturally that's cooling down. That's part of the celebration. Now, these are not small things. They seem a little bit symbolic, but they're not small things. The fact that people are emboldened and they're not afraid, because regimes like this that are a small number of people, they rely on fear. They rely on everyone being afraid to act up, afraid to speak out, afraid to resist the regime. So when they do something like pulling down a statue, walking outside, celebrating without their hijabs, these are things that actually do matter, and they embolden people to further action. And that's the key. You need further action. I'm going to keep coming back to that point. Now, on the significance of the Iranian supreme leader, who is, and how it's different than other presidents or like someone like Assad, who are dictators of countries, and what it means, we'll go to Patrick Bet David. Although I have to point out a criticism I have for his comments here. We'll get to that after we watch what he has to say.
The supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, is officially dead. They killed him. They found his body. Reports came in. Let me tell you why this is big. This is not killing a president. This is not killing a prime minister. This is not killing a king. You're killing the supreme leader of a religion. This is number two to God. They killed. And by the way, the last time the supreme leader was alive, I was in Iran. It was June 3rd, 89. When he died, Khomeini, I was in fifth grade at a school called Gulbenkian, and it was chaotic in Iran because their hero died. This guy didn't die. They killed him. By the way, according to reports, 81% of Iranians hate this regime and they want it to be changed. Not 61%, not 51%, not 31%. Nearly 81% want this person to be gone, and he's gone. So what happens next? Trump killed Qasem Soleimani. Reputation. Now he kills the supreme leader, combined with a couple different countries. How many people are on IRGC side? How many countries? Maybe a handful? Who's supporting them? Who? You don't think people are sitting there saying, well, about 180 countries are against you. Why? Because how many countries go around the world saying death upon America, death upon America, death upon infidels? Who says that? You don't think the president and his team wanted to negotiate with you guys to say you're never going to have nuclear weapons? No, just for 3 years so you can be out, and then we can get another Biden in, and we can go out there and do all that stuff. So, look, whether you're not happy about this because you're an anti-war person, which I totally get. No one wants war. I lived there as a kid. I saw people dying, and no one wants that. It was the most anxiety, panic as a little boy. Nobody should experience that. Till today, certain sounds still get me because I go back to being a boy, and I was in the U.S. Army here. Nobody wants to see this happen, except maybe if your name is John Bolton and Lindsey Graham. But for everybody else who is wanting the world to be a safer place, if this gets quickly like this and everybody else sits around and says, hey guys, they're about to kill you and your kids, and you, who's next? Let's just work with these guys. What do you want to do? Guys, we're done. Surrender. Put the flag. We're done, guys. What do you want to do next? Let's make it work. Let your people go elect somebody they want as a president, whoever it is. Let's go back to having good diplomacy. Let's stop being the agent of chaos in the Middle East, and let's make it a safer place. So, very interesting day for me, because I'll never forget June 3rd, 89. Never. I was 10 years old, about to be 11. So a great day for a lot of people that feel liberated. And none of this would have happened without President Trump. Many presidents have talked a big game. None of them had the brass to make the decision. You got to give him respect. While he's in the heat of moment with everybody saying, you shouldn't do it, you shouldn't do this, they planned it out different than the way they did Venezuela. And they got Khamenei. Obviously, let's see what happens next. They could retaliate. And but I think we will see fairly quickly what their next move is going to be.
All right. So he does a good job there laying out the fact that killing the supreme leader is not just killing a head of state. It's not just killing a ruler. It's killing a religious leader, someone who was like the supreme leader. And that there's only one other supreme leader. Ali Khamenei took over from Ayatollah Khomeini. And Ayatollah Khomeini, as he pointed out, died in 1989, and he just died. He wasn't killed. So he's talking about how severe this blow is. But what really annoys me about this Patrick Bet-David clip, and it annoys me about him in general, is that you notice how he avoids Israel. He avoids giving Israel any credit, even when he talked about that they chant death to America. He says they chant death to America, death to infidels. No, they don't. They chant death to America, death to Israel. And he talked about how America did this with other nations. No, they did it with Israel. And how America took out Khamenei. No, the Israeli Air Force took out Khamenei with America's help, but it was not America who did it. So it's kind of irritating how he deliberately, he goes to great lengths, Patrick Bet-David, to avoid giving Israel any credit or saying anything positive about Israel. So that kind of irritates me, but it still gives you a pretty good idea of what the meaning behind Ali Khamenei falling is. Now, this whole thing about how it's liberation, okay? How the death of Khamenei is liberation, and we see more celebrations here. Let's look at this one, and then I'll talk a little bit more. Which means long live Mitzvah. It's obviously a pro Pahlavi demonstrator, also celebrating the death of Khamenei. And there were other top brass who were killed. The former president of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who's an evil man, was also killed, which is all good news. Now, Patrick Bet-David talked there about people feeling liberated. What comes next? Maybe some of the people at the top will put down their weapons now and say, "Okay, let's work with you. We're willing to work with you guys." This brings us into the whole question of what regime change looks like, and we've been talking about it a lot. You see all the celebrations in the streets. There's a lot of chaos at the top leadership. I think there's a lot of premature celebrating going on. Let me explain. Why I think it's premature. This decapitation strike that was carried out yesterday on the first day of this, where dozens of top leadership, both military leadership and political leadership, were all eliminated in the space of literally the first minutes of this entire war, left the leadership in a shambles and in chaos. Meanwhile, they're firing off whatever missiles they can fire off. People in the IRGC and in the army, they're trying to attack and fight back a little bit, but they're also trying to get their act together at the top. The regime has not fallen. They could reinstitute some sort of command structure and get some of their heavies with their guns out into the streets and start suppressing the people. They need to weather the storm and remain in power, and they could still come back and reinstate their reign of terror. Okay, it is not over. They could also ease up on the Islamic restrictions, which could make it look like the regime is changing, but it would be the same criminals remaining in power. I've warned about this, that there's a possibility that we will have what I call fake regime change, which looks like regime change, where you'll have people in the second or third tier of the bureaucracy, of the leadership, stepping up and saying, we're no longer Islamists, we're willing to work with the West, we're more moderate, this is regime change, and the West will buy it because the West, and President Trump has shown this tendency as well, the West wants stability. You saw this in Venezuela, where Maduro was removed, and the Americans immediately started working with Maduro's number two, who was as much of a criminal as Maduro is. It's not really regime change necessarily. Now, this isn't the same as the Venezuela situation. In Venezuela, the U.S. actually went in there on the ground and they sort of took over. They're not doing that in Iran. So if people take over from the regime, from the Ayatollahs, who are part of the regime really, and bring a kind of stability and say, because we know how to run things, we know how the system runs, and they can, and they look legitimately like they know how to rule, but they're really the same criminals, and it really is the same regime. It could be sold to the West as regime change, but it won't be regime change, and that could be very problematic for the people of Iran. People of Iran, of course, probably won't stand for it, and then it means more protests. There could be a lot of chaos ahead of us. This isn't exactly the liberation day that everyone says it is. Although at the same time, I understand the emotions of Iranians because of what Patrick Bet-David said. This supreme leader was removed. It's not like if you kill a president and it's just next man up. You haven't really touched the system. But the supreme leader is also a symbolic figure, a religious figure that represents the regime in a way that most leaders don't represent their governments. So I understand the significance. I'm just trying not to be too Pollyannish and to really lay out the reality here that we are far from the regime falling. Now, there's another celebration I wanted to share with you because it's interesting and can be easily misunderstood. This is a tweet that in Syria, there were celebrations in Damascus suburbs as reports of the death of Ali Khamenei spread across the region. So here's a celebration in Damascus. Okay. These are Syrians in Damascus, which is a heavily Muslim area, and they're celebrating the death of Khamenei. But let's not make any mistakes. Let's not have illusions about what this is. This is not pro-Western or pro-American people celebrating the death of Khamenei. This is not the same as Persians who want to throw off the yoke of Islamism. The reason that Syrians are celebrating the death of Khamenei is that when Assad was putting down in the Syrian civil war, the way that Assad suppressed all the opposition, and remember, a lot of the opposition were jihadists, were ISIS, Al-Qaeda guys. That's why you have Ashara al-Julani, whatever his name is, the current president. He was the leader of HTS, which is an Al-Qaeda ISIS offshoot. They're the ones who ended up taking over. The Islamists, the Sunni Islamists in Syria were being oppressed by this Alawite minority that Assad was part of in cooperation with the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime was Assad's cooperation. They propped up the Assad regime, suppressing and persecuting all the people of Syria. Okay? So there were massacres of Syrians carried out by the Iranians, by the IRGC and Hezbollah in Syria in the process of trying to prop up the Assad regime throughout the Syrian civil war. And that's why they're celebrating. It has nothing to do with being pro-West or certainly not pro-Israel or pro-America or anything like that. It has to do with the fact that they hate the Iranian regime for their own reasons that are unrelated. Okay. And finally, I want to take a look at this video clip, this 2-minute video clip of Elika Lebon, who's an Iranian American, and what she has to say about how the left has been reacting.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me just say on behalf of 90 million Iranians who didn't have the opportunities to speak until now because they were muzzled, thank you to the United States. Thank you to the United States military. Thank you to the IDF, who are the only people who actually committed to this rescue operation when the rest of the world turned away. It is absolutely no surprise that the American left are against this operation, because for a long time they have been on the side of the terrorists ever since October 7th. Nothing new, nothing different. They've been trying to mask their narrative behind some type of pro-humanity rhetoric, when all along we can see what this is really about, which is their hatred for the West, and their hatred for the West has never been clearer in a situation where we are dealing with the worst atrocity of our time. And instead of standing behind the Iranian people who have been screaming for help while they have been massacred, instead they remained dead silent. And when this rescue operation was enforced, was the first time they spoke up. We're talking about the mayor of New York. We're talking about Congress people. This is the first time that they have spoken up, not to defend the Iranian people, but to defend the terrorists that have been massacring them. And that just tells you the greatest truth of all. That just tells you that the mask has finally fallen. These people who tried to lie to you, who tried to tell you that they were all about humanity, were lying from the beginning. And now the proof is as clear as day. It was never about humanity. It was never about human rights. It was always about hating the West. And that famous term that the communists once coined for those people, useful idiots, have never been clearer. Why? They're useful because they propagate communist and Islamist propaganda, and they're idiots because it is suicidal propaganda. Well, the mask has been dropped, the truth has been revealed, and the Iranian people and the rest of the world and civilization is now going to be free thanks to the United States and Israel.
Well, there you go. So the useful idiots of the left have not been celebrating Khamenei's death. They also were not, as she points out there, they also weren't defending the Iranian people when they were getting massacred by the ruling regime. Look, bottom line, it's great to see Iranians celebrating in the street. It's great to see them getting bold, pulling down statues, and there's been reports that they've even taken over a few towns and pushed the IRGC out. These are the beginnings, and we need to see more of this. I'm not saying that it's nothing. I'm saying it's a far cry from regime change, because the regime still has a monopoly on weapons. They're reeling from the attack on their leadership from yesterday, but that doesn't mean that they can't reconsolidate themselves, regain some power, and suppress these protests. And the regime is not gone until it's gone. The IRGC, as I've pointed out many, many times, the IRGC is a massive number of people, probably about 500,000 people in total. And it's not going to go away so easily. So the regime has not fallen yet, but Israel is attacking regime targets now. And we're going to get into that in our next update. Make sure to check out that update as well. We're going to record it right after this one. And please keep watching. Stay glued to this channel, because I'm going to be bringing you updates of what's going on, the Israeli perspective, the geopolitical perspective, and of course, what we're hearing from the streets of Iran as well. Thank you for sharing and subscribing and doing all that great stuff to help the channel grow. Really appreciate it. The channel is growing nicely. Please keep spreading the word and check out all the great content we're putting up at Israel 365 News YouTube channel. God bless.